February 2018 meeting of the Southampton Village Zoning Board of Appeals is open. Might be very brief tonight, folks. We have 5 decisions. First one being 2984, the Mitchell Family Real Estate LP, 180 Great Plains Road. May I have a motion?
I move that we accept this decision as written.
Have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
2988, Clear LLC, 145 Lee Avenue.
I move that we accept this decision as prepared.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
2989, Greenblatt Trust, 2015-1990 Meadow Lane.
I move that we accept this decision as prepared.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I'm recused.
Oh, okay. So it's 3-0. Did you get that? Okay. 2990, 35 Wine Dance LLC, 35 Wine Dance Lane.
I move that we accept this decision as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And 2991, 472 First Neck Lane LLC, 472 First Neck Lane.
I move that we accept the decision as prepared.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now, we have one case requesting an adjournment, and that's 2983, the Beechwood Latch, 101 Hill Street. I have a motion approving that.
I move that we adjourn as
Copy of the
requested.
file.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's right in front.
In the front.
472, right there, right in front of you. Right there.
291 First Neck Lane.
The one that came out of the file.
What did you
will I have
abstain
the,
from?
On 1990 Meadow.
That's the only one with notes on it?
And that's a recusal.
Does that have the notes on it that he made tonight?
No, he's got the original. That's a,
I can get a copy tomorrow at the village then.
Yeah, because...
He's
in the
got to add
change
some notes to
He's
that.
got to add something to that,
Yeah, about the garage.
about the garage.
Yeah.
Okay, I can get it tomorrow.
Check in tomorrow, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good. Where are we? Oh, we have a request to withdraw 2987 Morgan Shara, 38 Harvest Lane.
We don't have to motion.
Yeah,
that.
we have been doing that lately.
Yeah, well, I move that we withdraw.
Okay.
No, the motion to approve the
Motion to approve the
the
withdrawal.
request of the applicant to withdraw.
Do I have a second?
second.
All in favor?
Aye. Okay.
That brings us down to the one case we have, 2992 Chapel and Anderson, 465 Hill Street.
I'm Linda Riley, 235 Hampton Road for the applicant. I have affidavits of posting and mailing.
Need the file.
Should I start?
Yep.
Okay. This lot is on Hill Street, on the north side of Hill Street. It is a pre-existing non-conforming parcel of more than a half an acre. It's 29,205 square feet in the R40 zoning district. The applicants are requesting a variance in order to construct one-car garage on the property. It currently has no garage at all. This garage would be 13 feet, 10 inches by 19 feet, and it would be in the northeast section of their premises. I should probably put the survey down for you all to refer to.
We have it in the packet, right?
Yes, you have it in the package. It's in the north corner of the property, in a place that really functions as a rear yard. It's not a rear yard for zoning code purposes under your code, because there is also a private right-of-way that snakes around 2 frontages on the property. The north frontage is Hill Street.
Can you say that too?
Would you like to see that?
Yeah, he'd like to see it done on the camera. Put it on the table for him.
Well, what do we,
You want
He
to
gets
use
it
this
with the
one?
camera.
Want to use the big one?
okay,
Linda, you want this one?
I'll use the big one. I don't know if
It does.
it shows here.
You have it.
Yes, it does. There it does.
You see it all right, Charlie?
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay. So there's a private right-of-way that comes all the way up one side and across the top of the property. It's a private right-of-way that serves as access for two other property owners. So there are only two other property owners back there. It's a very narrow right-of-way.
There are
Kind
three
of-
parcels back there, all right?
There are three parcels. My clients own one of them. So there are two other property owners, although there are three parcels. You're correct. So the application is simply for permission to have it in what is technically a front yard because of the right-of-way. It meets the front yard setbacks, the required front yard setback, which is 40 feet. It meets the side yard setbacks. It meets the height requirements. It's well under coverage. But for a few inches, or a couple of inches, really, it would be behind the house. So it wouldn't even be in a technical front yard. The garage is proposed to go, as you can see, it's shaded in gray on the survey and the plan in front of you. It's proposed to go in a location that is exactly mirroring the back of the house, which is the 13 by 10 addition that you see on the back of the house was at one time a summer kitchen, and it's been converted over the years by my clients into a sort of a room. It's part of the house at the back. It has a certain architecture that is consistent with the rest of the house. The house, I should mention, is of historical interest. It's a beautiful, very old house, one of the oldest in this community. And the clients have very meticulously restored it over the years, and have done so with an eye really toward preserving the historical and architectural integrity of it. So it's very important to them that this garage fits in with the architecture and the historical nature of the premises. So the garage is purposely designed, it's designed by Mr. Brady here to mirror that and provide a sort of counterbalance to that. So it's really, as far as the eye could see, no closer to the back right-of-way than the back of the house. However, because of the way the setback, the property line goes, there is a slight difference. The proposed garage will have a setback of 40.9 feet, and the principal residence has a setback of 44.1 feet in that back area. So that's what necessitated the request for a variance.
What is the total difference, or the length of the difference, Linda, between the two then? Would you be differentiating between 49 and 44.1?
It's 40.9.
Yeah,
So it's
40.9.
close to 41, and 44.1
So
is
3 feet?
3 feet. 3 feet, which is kind of irrelevant to the eye because of the way the house is sort of canted on the property. So that's the only variance that's required. It's going to be used for a garage only for storage of one motor vehicle. They currently do not have any garage on the property. And they need it for storage of motor vehicles during the winter and at other times also. property is heavily screened in the back. There is an existing gate there that's already there. It's already been installed. And the driveway is proposed to come off of the existing gate. So there'll be really kind of no change in the right-of-way back there. It will, we contend, not be a detriment at all to the neighborhood. There is significant screening along there. It's actually shown on that survey that you have in front of you, the significant screening. It's actually more than is shown there. The bushes and the vegetation in general on both sides of the property line where that garage is are pretty deep. And so I don't think it's going to be visible to really anybody. It's certainly not going to be visible from Hill Street because the front portion of the house will block the view. There's no other way for this applicant to achieve this other than seeking a variance because of the technical difficulty with the 3 front yards. There's no other place it can be put. It really doesn't fit without variance relief in that little crook behind the house. So there's really no alternative. There are no unusual ecological or physical environmental conditions in the neighborhood, and we would argue that there's not going to be any increase in the usage of the lot. This garage is for the occupants of this lot, period, and that's it. And there's no self-created difficulty here, we would contend, because the applicants have resided here for over 30 years. They're long been property owners here, invested in this house and this neighborhood. So I don't have anything I want to say as part of my presentation. I heard that there's somebody here, and I would like to reserve some time after he speaks, if I can, to address anything he might raise. Thank you.
Any questions? Jim? Rob? Bo?
No questions?
Anyone from the public wish to be heard?
Yes, thank you. I'm going to give this letter, I think hearing.
That's ringing, I got it on the floor.
Nice noise.
Yeah.
So I'm John Pine, an owner with my wife at 449 Hill Street, where we have lived since 1984, and we're the neighbors just to the east of the proposed garage. The request for a garage by the applicant at 465 Hill Street has been ongoing for many years. On the surface, the application is acceptable, but its history makes us nervous, and let me tell you what's been behind this. The garage was initially proposed by Barbara Missett, who lived across the street at 471 Hill Street, and whose estate ended up selling her artist studio to the applicant, Chappell and Anderson. Chappell and Anderson maintained that they had the legal right to use the right-of-way, which you've just heard, that separates 465 and 471 Hill Street in a manner which was not acceptable to Barbara or other neighbors at that time. The presumed reason was congestion on this right-of-way, which is actually a street by, I believe, the village code. Barbara died, and this contested proceeding prevented another contracted buyer of Barbara's studio from final purchase, even though they appear to want to maintain the existing artist studio structure. At about the time of the original lawsuit, and certainly after Barbara died, Chappell and Anderson approached Ann and me about the garage project. Ann and I were willing to accept this addition on one provision, that no variance was required. Here we are. We had been burned when we had granted a variance to Bob Pressman, who his property at 473 Hill Street, just behind the 471 property, for a garage on his property. The next thing we know, Pressman gained approval to dig down 2 feet and create a second-floor apartment with running water, not what was described when we granted the variances. Since the Pressman construction, the situation has become a lot more involved on this little right-of-way. Robert Gary has subsequently built a house at the north end of this street, 475 Hill Street. It's a large house with multiple bedrooms and at least 6 spaces for parked cars. Pressman has sold his house, and Barbara's estate has sold her house to Chappelle and Anderson, who want to convert her art studio with 2 bedrooms into a carriage house with 5 bedrooms, needing 4 parking spaces. The diagram that was presented to the ZBA does not show these parking spaces, which were presented to the ARB on February the 12th. Do I have the right thing here? Excuse me. Right here, right here, right here.
You don't have to stand at the mic, you can stand anywhere on the front table.
Okay. They would like to put 2 of those spaces next to our property and quite close to the cut in the hedge to accommodate this garage. Furthermore, the spaces provided are located within a street, which is against village code. One needs to have off-street parking to accommodate the renovation of 471 Hill Street. Now, we argued this in front of the ARB, or we admitted a legal brief on this whole subject about legal parking, right-of-way, etc. And this area right here, which is right next to our property and right north of the or I should say right next to the cut, has its own history. Originally, there was a ginkgo tree in that spot. And about 6 years ago, suddenly the ginkgo tree was torn down. And Barbara Missett put a parking sign there, 471 Hill Street, which we contested at the time. And John Foster agreed with us, and it was actually cordoned off at that time as a turnaround space, not a parking space. So last week, just to let you know, at the ARB, John Foster came in and said these parking spaces are fine. And we really found that a little bit disingenuous because of the history of the property. The 2 parking spaces, the 4 parking spaces are right in these hairpin turns, and we think that with all the traffic, all the building, it's kind of dangerous. I'll go on. Excuse me. Now it seems the garage project does need a variance of the backyard setback, and it appears to have changed size. But I think actually it has not changed size, so I take that back. So we would like to have our support accompanied, we would like to have a support for this variance accompanied by a contract, or whatever word's appropriate, that would state something along the following lines. The footprint would remain in perpetuity as described tonight. The height would be no more than the height of the unspecified height of the summer kitchen, which I think Linda has explained. The garage would never be attached to any structure whatever in the main house. There'd be no running water, as we have had with the Pressman situation. And the on-street parking, which we consider illegal as a means of justifying the 5 bedrooms proposed for the renovation of 471, on both corners of the easement be eliminated from the plans of 471. That is no parking for 471 be allowed on the easement itself for code reasons, safety reasons, etc. The owners, and by the way, the screening for that property is mostly ours, mostly our planning. And if there's any further planning to be done, we'd very much like Anderson and Chappelle to do that. In all, I stress to you, we are supporting the request for a single-car garage, but not for a structure that would accommodate any other purpose.
Well, they haven't asked for anything else except a single-car garage.
Well, I know, but going back in history with the Pressman situation.
They'd have to come back to us if they wanted to do it.
I realize that, but suddenly, we thought everybody was going to come back to you, and suddenly, a different structure. That's my history. I wanted to tell you the history in that, and I just...
Where is the Pressman house?
The Pressman house is right above the north.
It's off the right-of-way?
Yeah, yes.
One of the three in back?
Well, it's right-of-way, but is it a right-of-way or is it a street?
It's considered a street, I believe.
I think it is considered a street, and therefore, there's a village code that prevents parking in the street.
That's interesting.
I'm sorry.
So these are, the garage is fine. Anderson and Chappelle came to Ann and me, as I said, and we felt it was a fine idea, but we didn't realize there was, we said if there was no variance, but there is a variance, and we have certain objections, especially because time has passed, and we have all these developments along the street. There are probably 6 parking spaces for the Gary house. I don't know how many parking spaces are for the Pressman now. It's been sold to another owner. Now the Chappelle and Anderson want to have 5 bedrooms, 4 parking spaces for their property, and it's all on this little narrow right-of-way, which we call a street.
So you're asking us if we grant this to have a condition in our decision that these parking places on the right-of-way be eliminated? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'd like it.
Is that what you're, that's...
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, they have plenty of spaces on their property to put the,
Legalize on that.
they've got plenty of spaces on their
Who owns the
property.
right-of-way?
The right-of-way, I don't know.
I
It's
think
not
they
as
do.
part of this property. May I be heard on that? Because I can answer that
Yeah,
question
go ahead.
specifically. The right-of-way is, no part of it is part of this property. It is complete, it is owned by what used to be Missett. And so my clients, although they do, and there was litigation on this, the litigation's been resolved. It happened, it's all been settled. It wasn't by anything else but agreement of the parties who...
What was the settlement?
The settlement was that Anderson, it was a bunch of things, including that Anderson and Chappelle have the right to use the right-of-way, which is not part of their property. The original easement actually says that the owner of 465, the one we're here for, Anderson Chappelle's property, cannot park on the right-of-way. They specifically cannot use it for parking, and that is also part of the settlement. So they cannot put their vehicles anywhere here. They have a parking area in the front on Hill Street, which they use, and they're going to use the back garage. But they have no intention of parking on the right-of-way, nor did they ever park on the right-of-way.
John, are you
Who's
aware
using
of...
these 2 spaces that are on the curb there?
Well, I believe Barbara Missett did.
Well, who's using them now?
Pardon me?
Who's using them now? Are there cars parked there like
I don't
right
think
now?
they're being used at all now. I don't think anyone parks there now.
Yeah. Can I explain the situation?
Well,
Yeah, as soon as Linda's finished.
I'm sorry, excuse me.
okay. My clients are here, and they can speak best, probably, to who parks there, if anybody, right now. There were a couple of erroneous statements that John Pine just made, probably because he didn't realize, but Barbara Missett never proposed any garage on this property. She did, in fact, on her property, again, which has nothing to do with what's here.
Where was her property?
Her property is directly behind.
All right, so it's one of the 3 in back.
It's one of the 3 in back.
It gets a little bit confusing because you got 4 properties here.
We have 4 properties, but you know, they weren't always 4 properties. And in fact, as I understand it, Barbara Missett's house, directly in back, was the carriage house to the main house, which is on Hill Street. And years ago, the back 2 lots, which had been vacant, were subdivided
At one
out.
time was owned by the Allen family, I believe.
Yes.
Long time ago.
Correct.
But if your client doesn't own the right-of-way,
My client does not own
then,
right away.
in this case, I can't see where we would have any jurisdiction to put a condition on something that's not part of this application.
They only have a right of access and egress, ingress and egress. That's it, over the right of
Right.
way.
Who owns the right-of-way?
The right of way is owned by Barbara not.
Well, she's deceased, right?
She's deceased. And, okay.
May I
Yeah,
explain?
please, sure.
Thank you.
We need some clarification here.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Tom Anderson, and Mark Chappelle and I own the property that's in the front. And just for a little bit of background, it's called, it was the Allen property, and it was the Marshall Fry property. And it's one of the 10 oldest houses in Southampton. The front house is a contributing structure to, if you will, in the historic district of Southampton. And all three properties that are behind it were outbuildings to the front property, which is our property. It was subdivided, and the three properties behind it, one was a studio, one was a caretaker's house, and one was a barn. They were, actually, this was Governor Al Smith's house as well. It was subdivided, and those three properties behind were sold off. The property in front, we bought. And when we bought it, which is what Linda was explaining, our property in our deed says that we had access to the right-of-way. And we used to park where the garage is being proposed. That was all parking for our property. At the time, the three properties behind it were all parking there when we bought it, but we owned it. So actually, a letter was sent notifying all the parties behind our house that we were removing all that parking back there and that we were putting the hedge in, so on and so forth. So then everyone behind us created their own parking. That's basically what happened, three separate parcels. So then, as we lived in the front, we bought that 32 years ago. When we lived in the front, we took the parking away from the back, we have it in the front. It's right, it's located there, the bluestone.
Can you point it on the table? And
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Here.
Right.
So we created that parking, and then we had 3 cars stolen from the front. So we came in 15 years ago and requested from the planning board at the time to put in 2 garages in the back. But it's all in the records here, John. Everyone knows about it. And when we proposed to put the 2 garages in, we were working through the process here 15 years ago, and the board requested that we not do the 2 garages. One of them was going to be here, and one of them was going to be here, and they asked us to do 1 garage. So we then came back to the board, this is all in the records, and we proposed a 2-car garage here.
This is the planning board you were dealing with.
That's the planning board, yes. And so,
Are you sure that's?
No.
yeah, well, that's what went on.
It was the zoning board.
The zoning board.
It was the zoning board, I
this
have to
board.
file.
You guys.
I
Yeah,
recall it being here.
I vaguely
What
remember.
board was it?
Yeah.
Zoning board.
It was the zoning board. It was us.
You'll excuse me, gentlemen, I'm not aware of all the reports, but it's 15 years later. So at the time that the garage project was going on, this project was going on as well, that Linda was explaining, was attached to the house, and we were making it into a family room. So it was rather complicated, but what happened is we got down to 1-car garage. And at that time, my sister was dying, and quite frankly, we withdrew it because I was sick of fighting it. I was in a difficult situation. So we removed it without prejudice. We withdrew the application. We're 15 years later, and what's happened is that John is correct that behind us, all those houses have all been sold, but Mrs. Missett's, the first one behind it. They've been sold over the years. They've all been torn down, and they've all had big houses built on them. One of them being Mr. Pressman's. One of them now is Mr. Gary's. They've all been built, and John is correct, there's a lot going on there, John. We've felt the same way about it. We're up in the front, but what are you going to do? It is what it is. We did not contest what anyone back there did. All right? Then Mrs. Missett died a couple years ago. And so the house went on the market, and there had been some litigation going on with her, with us, originally around this. She sued us, saying that we didn't have a right to the right-of-way. And so it went on for many years. It just didn't go anywhere. And when Mrs. Missett passed away, her estate, then had the property, and they came to us and they said, would you buy the house? Well, quite frankly, we didn't want to buy it. But along the way, this is more than you need to know, we learned that there was one contract purchaser that tried to go in there, but they learned that the lawsuit was still sitting there. She had passed away. So then they didn't move forward. And we didn't do anything. We just said, because the lawsuit's from her. And it's been there for 15 years, for years. So then what happened was then her estate came back to us a year later after the house had sold. And it's a very pretty, it's a studio. It's really beautiful. And then they came back to us and they said, would you buy it? Mrs. former husband is a friend of ours, Joe Missett. You may know Joe and Nancy. The sons came to us, they said, would you buy it? This is complicated, but one of the sons dropped dead of a heart attack. So now there's one son. I know it's a saga, but there's one. So the other son came to us and said, would you buy it? At the same time, we then came into the town and came into the office, took a look at the property on a serious basis. They informed us in the village office that a number of developers had been in. There is on one side of the house, which was once a backyard of the little house, there's a big, huge feral house there now that was once woods. Now on the other side, which unfortunately for John is over on the other side, there's another big feral house. So based on all of these places being redone and not wanting this studio to go down, we bought it at Christmas time this year. And they were very pleased that we did that. And at the time of it, the lawsuit was settled because we had the right of way in our deed. Her estate wanted the lawsuit to go away. We settled, and now we own that. So now that we are restoring it, and they're not 5 bedrooms, they're 4 bedrooms, and the parking for the property, this is complicated. When Mrs. Missett owned it, she has parking behind the house, which is ours now, for two cars back there. And these parking places, which Mrs. Missett had and used, and they are there up in the front. So they are irrelevant to this, but the point is we decided to come back in, I just wanted to explain everything, and go for the garage once again, back to the one-car garage. Last summer, we called Ann and John, who we like very much. We've been neighbors for 30 years. We asked them over. We went over, as John's pointing out, all of the architecture. We showed the plans. We have an email from Ann saying all the things that John is asking, that it look like, be size, height, all of that would be all of what it is, which it is. We did explain, which is why we called them, that there's like a 2-foot variance. Well, I don't know what is the variance.
3 feet.
What?
Yeah, it's about 2 feet.
2 feet variance. Because if it goes over, John, over here, it'll touch the house. And it just would be better if it didn't for 2 feet. So we did do all of what we said we did. We've hired Brian Brady. He's our architect. We've designed it to look exactly like this. They are mirrors. If you pull back, they will be mirrors of each other. Exactly the same. Same brick foundation. House is 18th century, designed by Amar Ambury, which is one of the most famous, did Guildhall, did so many of the great structures out here. So we're following it with Brian, but that's separate from this. We're looking to get the variance so it doesn't have to touch the house. We could put it back there, but it will touch the house. We don't want it to touch the house. Now, that's why we came in. and we don't have any intention of having any running water. We don't want any of that. We just want to put the car in a garage because it's out in front. It was stolen several times. Everyone knew that. And we just would like to put the car in a garage. We did approach Jan and John. They were fine with it. The Pressman property has been sold to Miles and Carol Tintle. We know them very well. They're down in Vero Beach. Carol and Miles, we sent them the plans. They said we have no problem with it. We're just trying to put the one-car garage in. That gentleman said, I hope I didn't make it complicated. We're really here to see if we can't get the
Well, I
variance.
think you cleared things up a little bit.
Excuse me, sir?
I think you cleared things up a little bit about the
Thank
parcel
you.
in
It would
back.
seem complicated, but I will say this. We are preservationists. Mark is on the Landmark Board, which is David Rockefeller's board in New York City. I'm one of the founders of Sotheby's International Realty here in America. You know, I opened all the offices out here. I'm no longer there. But we are preservationists. We're into it. I'm on 3 preservation, but we're into it. We want it to be beautiful. We love our town. Everybody does a great job doing and protecting everything. We totally get it. And we've been there 32 years. We just want to put in a one-car garage. That's basically simply it. Thank you.
Mr. Pine, do you have anything else to add?
Sir, do you hold the record for the most stolen cars?
For the most what?
Stolen cars.
Oh, I don't know.
It was what the CJ7s.
The sad part was it was the same Jeep replaced 3 times, and we decided that wasn't a good thing. So we got rid of the Jeep, and then we've been driving back and forth, and what's really happening, if you don't mind me saying, is we're getting a little older, and we are not going to be we'd like a car out here, and because the driving and all of that is just what it is, and we thought it'd be nice to have a car out here, and we'd like to put it in a garage, because snow, blah, 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 blah. That's kind of it. There's no garage. Okay, thank you so much.
Several things. I may have misrepresented that the garage was for the Chappelle and Anderson, not Barbara Missett. I never said the garage was for Barbara Missett.
It's okay.
You did.
We know, but it's all right.
That's what you said.
But it's for us, we all know that. We know that.
Well, I was reading, and I don't think that that's what it said there, but maybe in interpretation. But I'm very troubled by this. I'm first of all troubled by the parking. This parking right next to the cut, where you have a cut, and I just would raise the point of safety and all these other issues that one has to worry about when you're on a zoning board.
John, you want to point that out on the map where you're referring to?
Sure.
It's on the curve, right?
Well, there are 2 curves.
Yeah, but this is on this.
Actually, it's a hairpin.
Curb or a turn? Is there
Turn.
actual curbing?
Well, there's if you can look here, there's one curve here and one curve here.
Is there parking on both curbs?
Yeah, well, that's what they're proposing.
This is pertinent to the.
No, we're not proposing that.
They're there.
They're not proposing that.
Barbara put that parking in.
She did not.
Yes, she did.
Can I explain?
He did not put the parking in.
She did. It's
She did not put the parking in.
Can I explain all this for you?
2013.
John, the parking is
Mr.
there.
Pine, try to address the board.
Okay, I'm Brian Brady. I'm the architect for the property behind this property, which is the property that owns the right-of-way. All right, these are my drawings from the ARB, which was presented last week. What you're seeing here is the actual survey done by Squires and Holden for the Missett property when they closed on it. When they got their C of O, this was the survey that was used, and it says there's parking in here which is deeded to this property. 2 spaces here, 2 spaces there. We don't even need this parking because we have parking behind for that. It's a 4-bedroom house, not a 5-bedroom house, so we need 3 parking spaces. We have 2 spaces up here, we needed 1 more. So I went into John Foster and said, where should we put the 1 space that we need? And he said, I would really like to see how this all works with the hairpin turn. I met with Dean McNamara, the fire marshal. We actually drove a fire truck down the right-of-way and back. Then Squires and Holden did a new survey, which was part of this file, showing the turn of the fire trucks and how it would work. So what they decided to do is have this eliminated and not be used for parking, and the fire truck can make this turn, and we just need 1 more spot there. So that's how the parking was
Who are these
resolved.
spots being used for? Which house uses these spots?
This house. Not the application tonight. the house behind it
that they own.
that they own.
Oh, now, once again, who owns the right-of-way?
They do.
They do, not because of the front house, but because of the back house?
Yes.
Okay, that's clear.
And then how
So
is,
they didn't own it until just
Christmas.
recently?
Right.
and then how has this been resolved that these other parking places are going away and now there's only one?
There's a
That
new-
shows 4 spaces,
But this was my plan for the ARB. There's a new survey by Squires and
just
Holden,
1 space.
which that was presented
Okay.
last week.
You presented it with both these places, come on.
This is my drawing. The
Okay.
Squires and Holden survey
Well,
came
what we saw,
after this.
what we saw at the ARB meeting was, I believe, these two, because...
Right,
my-
but at the
my
ARB
wife-
meeting, parking is not discussed.
Not an issue.
It's not an issue, but John Foster came and made a point about it.
He was explaining, that's all.
Well, he said that these both were fine.
They were fine because, in theory, they came with this property.
So, listen, I don't want to hold up you guys anymore. The most important thing for us was that this was never a parking space. John Foster agreed with us when Barbara Missett tried to make it a parking space, it was not a parking space. So all we're saying is that parking space is right near the cut where the garage is, and so we were concerned about the safety and the way this whole area worked from a public point of view.
That's not an issue. It's been
Going away.
taken away.
They're gone.
Yeah.
Okay, so then
So
you
the
have no
parking's
problem
resolved.
with...
So it's going to be one space
Yes,
at one of the turns,
right here at
First
the
one.
end.
the first turn.
Right.
And then you're going to use the Barbara Mrs. Pryor
Two
space.
spaces back here.
Right, okay. I would just like to clear up one other thing, though, and I'd like to say that you may have thought that some developers were coming in, but you had a signed contract, as Linda knows, with Ann Prosser and Hollis Russell for the property, and keeping it as a Sparta studio.
What are you talking about? We never had any sign.
We don't know what you're talking about.
Linda said,
You're talking to each other.
you said that there were developers coming in.
Please address the board.
Sorry.
It's very complicated when we have
Okay.
crosstalk.
Actually, this is probably irrelevant.
Yeah, it seems to be to a certain extent.
Yeah.
All right. Is there anybody else in the public who'd like to be heard? Paul?
So, John, do you have any objections to this now?
Well, there are some conditions in the letter that I certainly would like to make sure that we adhere to, that are adhered to.
Well, those may be objections this board has no power to enforce.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean, to say that somebody cannot have water in a structure is not something that I think this board has the jurisdiction to enforce. And that would require a covenant recorded in the county senate.
and the joining of the house,
Yeah.
which I don't think is their plan at all. But
So-
It has to be 5 feet from the house as an accessory structure.
So what, you said there are issues in the letter, but as we stand here now, do you have any, assuming the letter conditions don't exist anymore, what issues do you have with this now?
I think the other one was the height.
The height?
The height's the same as the house, right?
Height's the same as
16
that.
feet, just like the house.
I just think he requested a covenant that it wouldn't go higher. That was the only other condition that I would...
It's an accessory structure, it can't.
Can't go higher than 16 feet,
Right.
by code.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing is to have a hearing on that whole parking issue in that, what we consider.
All right, so is there an issue that you have now with the park?
No, as long as it's not going to be parking.
There are no other issues?
No, I think that's fine.
No comments?
So we close this one for decision?
Yes.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. I have a motion to close the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
This meeting, February meeting 2018, the Southampton Village ZBA is closed.